I think one of the characteristics of a clean energy or a sustainable energy system is that you would not have any one element in that system that was so powerful that it could bend the will and influence the actions of every other single player in the system. And yet that's really what the definition of a superpower is. So I think the title is provocative for today's session, but I think we have to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt and perhaps with a little bit of skepticism in thinking about whether or not a world in which we had clean energy would be a world in which there wouldn't, in fact, be a role for superpowers in the traditional sense. Now I want to say a little bit about energy commodities, which was the third item in my train of thought. What I've noticed, almost always when we get together in sessions and meetings like this to talk about energy, we really are talking about energy commodities. They are not the same thing. We are usually focused on electricity and fuels, the supply for them, the demand for them, the efficiency with which they're used. After all, it's the commodities that move through our market system. It's the way people like me make a living, dealing with their supply and their demand and helping others do so. But the energy system is actually much bigger than that. And this is not just an academic point. Peter Drucker, who many of you will recognize the name as one of the founders of modern management theory, wrote years ago, if not decades ago, that there really is no demand for any energy commodity. And this is particularly true in the case of energy. There's no demand. Nobody wants a barrel of oil in their living room. Nobody wants a kilowatt hour of electricity in their hand. What the fundamental demand is always for is some underlying service or amenity which is being required by the customer or the consumer or the citizen. The reason I say it's not an academic point is that what we've observed in the last 30 years in the energy commodity marketplace, whether you're talking about fuels or electricity or the sum of both of them, in every single OECD country, in every single OECD economy, since 1975, the ratio of fuel and electricity consumption to economic output has declined dramatically. You could think of it as an increase in energy commodity productivity, but it's 35 or 40% more economic output today per unit of fuel and electricity consumed, as was the case 35 years ago. It's the single biggest observable driver towards a cleaner energy system that exists. And what happened? What happened is that, in fact, the energy commodities always are just contributors to a wider web of value, which is delivering that fundamental demand for service or need, whether it's a comfortable home or a comfortable workplace or access to employment or access to recreation or education or shopping, whatever the fundamental demand is, energy commodities are only one contributor to providing it. And what we've noticed in the last 30 years is that information, innovation, intelligence, advanced design have all increased their role in providing those services at the expense of the role of the energy commodities. It's not just energy efficiency in the sense that we're using our energy commodities more efficiently. It goes much deeper than that. In fact, if you analyze why it is that we have such a much more productive energy commodity utilization today than we did have 30 years ago, about 1/3 of it is due to better light bulbs, more efficient cars, more efficient use of energy commodities. But the other 2/3 has to do with changes that occurred in all of the OECD economies and which are still ongoing, which have very little, in fact, in some cases, nothing to do with the price of fuel or the price of electricity or the energy commodity markets per se.